Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continuing our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 2, The Cause of All Causes, Text 42. Please repeat Burloka, Kalpita, Padbyam, Uvarloka, Asya, Nabita, Svarloka, Kalpita, Murna, Iti, Va, Loka, Kalpana, Burloka, Kalpita, Padbyam, Varloka, Syanabitaha, Svarloka, Kalpito, Murna, Divaloka, Kalpana, Burloka, Kalpita, Padbyam, Bhuvarloka, Syanabitaha, Saloka, Kalpito, Murna, Divaloka, Kalpana, Bhurloka, Kalpita, Padbyam, Bhurloko, Syanabitaha, Svarloka, Kalpito, Murna, Divaloka, Kalpana, Bhurloka, Kalpita, Padbyam, Varloko, Syanabitaha, Varloka, Kalpito, Murna, Varloka, Kalpana, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Purloka kalpita padyam Uvarloko shanabitaha Svarloka kalpito murdna Itivaloka kalpana
Urloka Kalpita Padbyam, Padbyam,
Uvarloko Syanagita,
Varloko Syanapitaha,
Svarloka Kalpito Murdna,
Svarloka Kalpito Murna,
Iti Valoka Kalpana,
Divaloka Kalpana,
Buloka kalpita padyam
Kalpita Padbyam,
Uvarloko shanabitaha
Varloko Syanapitaha,
Svarloka kalpito murdana
Varloka Kalpito Murna,
Itivaloka kalpana
Divaloka Kalpana,
Purloka Kalpita Papya,
Urloka Kalpita Padbyam,
Uvarloka Sunavita,
Varloko Syanapitaha,
Svarloka Kalpito Murdina,
Svarloka Kalpito Murna,
Iti Valoka Kalpana,
Itivaloka Kalpana,
Burloka Kalpita Padyam,
Burloka Kalpita Padbyam,
Bhuvalokasya nabitaha.
Varlokosya napita.
Swarloka kalpito murdna.
Svalokakapito morna.
Iti valoka kalpana.
Divalokakapana.
Purloka kalpita padvyam. Bhuvaloko shinabitaha. Swarloka kalpito murdna. Iti valoka kalpana.
Lokakalpita Bhavyam
Burlokakapita padbyam.
Uvaloko Sanabitaha
Bhuvarlokosya napitaha.
Swailoka Kalpita Murdna
Svalokakapito morna.
Iti Valoka Kalpana
Divalokakapana. Borloka, the entire planetary system, from Patala to the earthly planetary system. Kalpita, imagined. Padbyam, situated on the legs. Bhuvarloka, the Bhuvarloka planetary system. Asya, of the universal form of the Lord. Napita, out of the navel abdomen. Svarloka, the higher planetary system, beginning with the heavenly planets. Kalpita, imagined. Morna, from the chest to the head. Iti, thus. Ba, either. Loka, the planetary systems. Kalpana, imagination. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Others may divide the whole planetary system into three divisions, namely the lower planetary system on the legs up to the earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems, Svarloka, from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. Purport. The three divisions of the complete planetary systems are here mentioned. 14 are imagined by others, and that is also explained. Om Gyanatamedandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Maharaj, would you like to kindly give a comment on this? So we've been hearing about, I'll just read the previous verse from yesterday again. My dear son Narada, for me, that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Atala, is situated on the waist. The second, Vitala, is situated on the thighs. The third, Sutala, on the knees. The fourth, Talatala, on the shanks. The fifth, Mahatala, on the ankles. The sixth, Rasatala, on the upper portion of the feet. And the seventh, Patala, on the soles of the feet. Thus the Virat form of the Lord is full of all planetary systems. So Srila Prabhupada here in the purport, he says the 3 divisions of the complete planetary system are here mentioned. It says 14 are imagined by others. And that is also explained. So sometimes we hear the universal creation described as 14, realms, 14 divisions, 7 realms, 7 divisions, but most commonly is described as having 3 divisions: lower, middle, and higher. So this is the last text of this chapter, the cause of all causes. And tomorrow we'll be starting a new chapter. And in this verse that I just read from yesterday, it's talking about the ankles, the shanks, all the way up to the shoulders and the head. So there's beginning a description of seeing the universal creation, this material world, in a direct connection of the Lord, where it's given many different examples in the following chapter that is almost personifying the creation of the material world, so that you can begin to see the Lord in all of creation. So one could ask, what's the point of understanding this creation, if we're trying to understand God? But the creation here is a creation of God. So when we learn to see everything in connection with Him, it becomes that much easier to connect to Him. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, some of the descriptions that's given in the next chapter. But from what I recall, it's like the vegetation is the hairs of the Lord. I forget them, but just to give an example, like the sun is His vision, the water is His blood flowing, different aspects like this. So when you look at them, you can start to see. And what I've heard is that this isn't necessarily so, but this is to help somebody who's too materially conditioned, that can only see the material world, that they can begin to see the Lord. And I was thinking about this, imagine if an ant could talk or understand, and you try to tell the ant about, the whole universal creation. It's too far-fetched. It's too much for him to understand. So you'd have to explain it in means of, the anthill of grass and dirt, and give a way that, the little creature can see the Lord in the things that He knows. So similarly, us, we have our little world, our sphere of activities, and we could see nature, we could have these observances, and to begin to think about, stars, space, different planetary systems, it's mind-opening. And when you can see that in connection to the Lord, it actually takes us to a higher level of thought, a higher level of realization. So the more we can contemplate on that, the more it can open up our mind to perceiving the Lord's presence in everything. But the goal is not to just limit ourselves to understanding the material world around us. I'm remembering hearing a story of, there's scientists, and there's some scientists, they spend their whole life dissecting beetles and bugs, and they're spending years and years trying to find out how the reproductive system of a cockroach works. Yes, I'm on the cutting edge of science. I've nearly cracked it. I just have to do this one last test, and then we'll figure out exactly how the cockroaches reproduce. What use is this knowledge? What use is it? Most of what we do, we have to question, what is the use of our activities, of our actions, of our desires? So much what's going on, and we don't even know what we're doing. What comes to my mind now is there's desires of expeditions to go to Mars or other space expeditions, or the fronts with artificial intelligence, or many different cutting edge technologies. We often stumble into something because we don't really know what we're doing, and we think, okay, this would be a good idea, and then we get too far into it, and we don't actually have the foresight to see what will be the repercussions of this. Is this actually necessary? Will this really be useful, or will it cause more harm than good? So especially with the artificial intelligence that's being created and used pretty widely, starting it seems really good in the beginning, but there's immense repercussions to come. You know, it's funny because our world, it relies on people to work and do activities and actions and different roles in society. But, you know, nowadays, people don't leave their house. They go shopping online. They order everything from Amazon. And then you have like a multi-billion-dollar company. And what do they want to do? They want to cut out all the workers and have robots do all the work, and have, you know, little drones take the items that are purchased and ship them to people's houses. And then, you know, use artificial intelligence and all these different, what's the word? Algorithms to put everything that you want and you desire right at your fingertips, so you don't even have to look. It's just right there, and you say, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want. And you buy and you buy and you buy. So this is the way that Kali Yuga is going, is cutting out this human aspect and giving people a role in society. But as we hear from this Vedic culture, everybody has a role within society to perform, to fulfill. And what's the purpose of that role? To connect to the Lord. It's said that whatever dharma one performs that doesn't provoke attraction for hearing of the Lord is simply a waste of time. Shrama evihi kevalam. And it's also said that whatever one's role is in society, whether they're a big president, whether they're a garbage man on the street, whether they're, you know, a professional athlete, a musician, you know, a IT person, whatever they're doing, if it's connected to the Lord and they're developing attraction and love to hear about God and really understanding their connection with God, this is perfection of life. Samsiri Haritoshanam. It leads to perfection and happiness and connection to Lord Hari. So whether we're in this middle planetary system we find ourselves now, the earthly realm, if we're in the lower planetary system, which is filled of immense tamagun, of ignorance and darkness, or if we find ourselves in the heavenly planets, the higher planetary systems, Svargaloka, this principle still remains, that if what activities and actions you're performing don't provoke to hear the message of the Lord, which is glorious when properly heard and chanted, it provokes Shri Gauranatai Ki Jai. It provokes bliss to be awakened and stirred from the heart. And you converse with others about this, and it becomes even more blissful and more relishable. If this isn't performed, then no matter what situation you find yourself in, it will feel incomplete. We can gather, we can talk about all sorts of different hobbies, all sorts of different things. You know, I may walk out on the street and I may hear people talking about one groups of activities. Let's just say, you know, sports or drugs or, you know, whatever it may be. Then you come into another atmosphere and you may hear of other things, you know, like hiking or, you know, something like gardening, something more sattvic. But whatever we're talking about, if it's not somehow connected to the Lord or this transcendental message that's coming from the Lord, then it leaves a void in the heart. Something to be wanted. Something we're lacking. And we could try to fill this void in our hearts with so many different activities, so many different conversations, so many relationships, so many hobbies, so many travels. But there's no escaping this void in the heart. The only way to fill this, to be completely satisfied, is to engage in the Lord's service. And as I mentioned, this Kali Yuga, we have to take to the Yuga Dharma. Harinam Sankirtan, congregational chanting of the Lord's holy names.
Let me say, you're talking about serving God, but if we understand that God has everything, what does he need service for? And I don't feel inspired to work for someone who has everything already. I'd rather give to someone who's poor and destitute and who can really appreciate what I give them. Whereas if I give something to God, how do you even appreciate it? He already has everything. Maybe you can clarify that.
Well, the examples given that, if we want to take care of a tree, we must water the roots of the tree. And if the roots of the tree are nourished, then the whole tree will become nourished itself. But if we try to take care of the branches, the leaves, and everything individually, then the tree will become disturbed. So similarly, if I try to put my attention on serving the homeless, helping people who are needy, surely that's a good cause. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he doesn't deny this. He says this is a good starting point, but we should focus on rising higher. And we could go higher because whenever we try to render service to some group or some individual, it's always limited. It's always lacking. For instance, we could open a hospital and it's going to help so many people. But what is it actually helping? It will just help their body. The body's temporary. It's going to die at some point. The body that we are in will get diseased and we will die. So this hospital, it could help all sorts of different people, but who's a good person, who's a bad person, who deserves help, who doesn't deserve help, that we don't know. We can never tell. But who knows this? The person who's all-knowing, who's all-pervading, who's above time, who's above, the dictates of a temporary body. So by rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we're putting our energy in something that's eternal, that's everlasting, that's free from any defects of ego, of illusion, of duality, of temporary existence. And by serving him, he can give his blessings where they need to go, because we're limited. We're very limited. So that's just a few thoughts on the matter. Does anybody have any other points or thoughts? Yes, Jagannath Prabhu.
So one might say that this artificial intelligence, it's actually a good thing, because when we give the manual labor to the robots or the machines, then people have more of a capacity either for spiritual life or for creative thinking. So what would be a good response for that? Would we agree with them that artificial intelligence should be used to enhance our spiritual life?
Would you agree with them?
I wouldn't know what to say if I disagreed with them.
Everything material is, it's bad, but it's also good. This is material existence. It's a duality. So one person's trash is another man's treasure. One person's pain is another person's pleasure, and vice versa. But the key thing that you mentioned is how to use it. Prabhupada, he gave the example that the Western world is like a blind man, meaning he's very strong, he's very able, he can do a lot of things, but he doesn't have the vision of where he's going, like I mentioned. And India's ancient Vedic culture, at least, is like a lame man. It has the vision, it can see what should be done and what should not be done, but it doesn't have as strong capabilities as the Western world in terms of production and management and, building a really big infrastructure, these type of things. So we could take these technologies and use them. And like you said, if we have a system set up and something's good working and it gives us more time so we can engage in Sankirtan, more time to engage in hearing, chanting, doing service, then that could be beneficial. It could be beneficial. But ultimately it's artificial and it's not sustainable. Because my Guru Maharaj used to say, we can look out these windows right here, but these windows, they're not actual windows. Because what are we looking out to see when we look through the window? It's illusion. It's Maya. And he'd say that, these pictures right here, these are actual windows into the spiritual world. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is, a window into the spiritual world where we can connect with Krishna and see what it's like in Krishna's abode. And there we see how life is meant to be, simple and joyous. So in Vedic culture, the point is simple living and high thinking. We should live real simple off the land. And God provides everything. You do a little work on the land, you have cows, you cultivate the land produces vegetables and grains, the cows produce milk. And if you actually did this, work becomes minimized compared to what people are forced to work nowadays in the modern society. People have bought into a system where they think they have to work endlessly and they're never able to make ends meet. And there's a big division of wealth. There's stress and anxiety bred into it, and people think they always have to work. I know when I was younger, when I was a kid in school, I learned about, retirement age and like social security fund. And like, there's a system set up for people to retire. But the way our current government and civilization is being ran here, that age is getting pushed back further and further and further. So people, if you work just like a normal, average, mediocre job, you almost can never retire. And, in Vedic culture, we hear, okay, you retire when you're 50 years old and you go engage in spiritual life, spiritual practices. And then you have younger people there to help and look out for you, to take care of you. It's a whole system that's harmoniously designed, that's centered around cultivating spirituality. So we could try to use all these modern technologies and everything, and they could be helpful because we're in a certain time, place, and circumstance. But ultimately, we should understand that, Krishna designed things perfectly. And if we follow this varnashram system and live simply according to that, that will be most beneficial. But we're quite far from there right now, so we have to make do with what we have. Is there any other thoughts or comments, corrections, doubts? So the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's so nice. And, if we don't have a taste for reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we should just talk about the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's one thing to come to the class. You may feel forced or it's very formal, but, read a little bit of the Bhagavatam and discuss the Bhagavatam with others. And immediately you become enlivened. You become filled with wisdom. You become inquisitive. You connect with it much deeper, and you realize there's actually personalities in there that are described that's covering all different spheres of life, spoken for the benefit of all living beings. And the best way to get a taste of hearing about the Bhagavatam is by serving. Shushusho Sharadhana Syavasudeva Gatha Ruchihi Syan Mahat Sevaya Viprapunya Tirtha Nishevana. Such great service is done by rendering service. It awakens the traction to hear Krishna Katha. And Nashta Prayesha Bhajeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By rendering service to these Mahatmas, to these people who are fixed in spiritual life, one develops a taste to hear about the Lord's message. When one hears about the Lord's message, one realizes the Lord as an irrevocable fact. One realizes that this is substantial. There's something here. I should give more of my energy into this, more of my life into this. We have a golden opportunity to be here, to be able to render devotional service to the Lord. And if we want to do a little bit of service here and then have a little bit of time for myself to go here and travel and do this, then that's okay. The Lord will allow us to do that. We can do whatever we want to do. But know that we're wasting a golden opportunity, that we can render as much devotional service as we possibly can. And we might not be able to rise to that occasion, but at least we should know and be aware that that's the opportunity that we have. Prabhupada has given us everything. He's given us everything. Everything. He put so much into translating these books, to writing these purports, to having all of his lectures recorded, traveling all around the world, preaching to so many different people, giving us these temples, the structure of the temple. And all we have to do is render some service and take part in it. And then spiritual life becomes immediately attainable. But it's attainable only to the degree that we want it. Just like Krishna Bhagavan Prabhu was mentioning yesterday. This word volume. You remember what this word means? Greed. Greed means to the degree that we want to know God. I'm sitting here talking about God. It's a big concept and, it sounds nice, but to the degree that we want to know God, that's how how much he'll reveal himself to us. He'll reveal the path. He'll reveal the knowledge, the wisdom, and ultimately he'll reveal himself. So that's something that we should constantly check with ourselves. And if we think in any way, I can't do it, I'm not cut out for it, I can't do it in this life, maybe that's where we're actually at. But if we think that, know that that's an anartha. Because One of the offenses to chanting of the holy names is to not have complete faith in chanting the holy names. So if we're chanting the holy names and we're thinking, oh, I'm too fallen, oh, I can't do it, oh, whatever, we're making a distinction between me and mine and Krishna's. This is an offense, actually. What's the best way to become clear from this offense, though? It's to keep chanting the holy name, but you have to give your heart into chanting. One can go on chanting for millions of lifetimes and still not attain the desired goal. We talk so much about chanting, you're not your body, do this, do devotional service. And some will say, yeah, it's going to happen eventually. Just keep going on, only time is in between us. This is true. Time is in between us and realizing God. But how much time? 1 second, 1 minute, 1 lifetime, 1 million lifetimes. Sooner or later, we'll realize that there's no pleasure outside of serving the Lord. But how we realize that, when we realize that, that's up to us. We need to develop this lolium. And to develop this lolium, we need to serve those who have this, like Prabhu was mentioning yesterday. And we need to hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Srimad Bhagavatam, it directly describes the glories of the Lord and the glories of those who are approaching the Lord. And in this way, we can see pretty clear what life's goal is and how to attain it. Otherwise, we're just going to be hovering around on our mental platform. I'm going to, take care of my house, my family, my parents, my kids, my community, and think that I'm doing a good job. But if I'm doing anything that's strictly related just to the body, it's illusion. It's illusion. My parents, my children, I have nothing to do with them. From a material perspective, yeah, we may be indebted. They help take care of us. But no matter what happens in life, the Lord is there to take care of us. And Prabhupada gives the example. There's the elephant living in the jungle, and he gets so much quantity of leaves to eat every day. The squirrels, they're given so much quantity of nuts to eat every day. We may think that we're maintained by some skill that we have, some action, some relative, some organization. And that may be there. Yes, this is true, but this is a smaller way of looking at it, because ultimately the Lord is providing and sustaining for everybody. So as soon as we can come to that realization, it's much more broad-minded, much more liberated, and in line with reality. And this is what is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially this of seeing this material creation of everything in it related to the Lord. So thank you everybody for hearing the Bhagavatam, for tolerating me. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.